I keep posting in Grok. That I did some research with Grok, and the top 20 cities are 19 are run by Democrats, one by Republican,
Hmm.
and anyone that's in a red state is run by a blue mayor. So
Okay. Deb, I have all of those things I know is going to point you in the right direction. I don't know if I'm going to post tomorrow's, yesterday's. I don't know if I'm going to put that on my Step into Cafe Americana website. But when you go into that website, when you go onto that YouTube channel, you go into playlists and then it'll have everything that we've done. But I didn't put the last like three in there. I'll do that after our meeting today.
I gotta go on my YouTube.
Actually, Deb, you think let me unmute you, Deb. That's all right. I know I'm catching you off guard, but Chris, I haven't heard from him. He's crickets today, and we talked yesterday after the thing. He was supposed to come in. So, do you want to
Sure.
just hang in and lend commentary?
Yeah,
We're going to talk about
I
Newsom.
can riff.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to talk about Newsom, attacking Trump on this National Guard stuff, saying that, why isn't he going into Louisiana and these other states? But our counter argument is that the crime in the big cities of those states are the governors. I mean, the mayors are Democrats. So so it's you know, and this is all politics. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about Trump breaking with Reaganomics. And Alan, what are you going to do?
I think I'll talk about the tariffs and the Indian rupee and get everyone's take on
Okay.
that, since that really piqued my interest, and I'd like to hear everyone else's opinion on it, how they feel about it.
Okay.
What was the thing you just mentioned?
Oh, the Indian rupee sank to a all-time low. It's its weakest ever against the US dollar due to the tariffs imposed by Donald Trump.
You can tell I'm just waking up. I thought you said ruby, like a Jew. I'm like, what's an Indian ruby? And then I was like, oh no, I'm really out of it on the news.
They have rubies too.
It's some new thing. I don't know what it is. I know what the rupee is.
I know.
Okay. Well, I'm going to begin. So, good morning, everyone. Thank you for stepping into Cafe Americana. We are doing the substitute morning meeting while the two-way is on vacation this week. This is our last day of doing it. The two-way should be back Monday. And then, of course, every Sunday you can join me, Andres, and ML Shaw for our Step into Cafe Americana Sunday greeting 9:30 East Coast time. So today's topics, there are many. We didn't even talk about the CDC and Bobby Kennedy. I think that might be even for a bigger discussion, and maybe if we can get a medical person on to talk with us, maybe we'll deal with that on Sunday. But I don't really want to get into it today if we can avoid it. So a couple of topics. Trump's pressure on India. Alan's going to handle that. Modi is actually going to sit down with China because he's having all kinds of issues financially with Trump strangling him with the secondary tariff idea, not buying, trying to force him not to buy oil from Russia. And a couple of topics that I found interesting in the news. Oh, we got Gavin Newsom. We don't want to forget about that. We got Gavin Newsom going after Trump about this National Guard movement and how come he's not sending troops into cities or into cities where that belong to red states. So that's one of the issues there. Newsom is staying on the attack for against Trump, which is good for him, I guess. And we also have Trump getting away from Reaganomics, and politicians are polarized. American voters, not so much. I found that pretty interesting. That was an opinion piece in the Times today. So why don't we go to, let's start with Newsom and attacking Trump on crime and how the red states have higher crime. And let's try and give his perspective. So obviously Newsom was the first victim of the National Guard being sent into his state, right? With the when Trump sent the National Guard into LA over the summer. Um, I don't, it was to me it was much ado about nothing in the big picture, but it that was incited by ICE going to like a Home Depot, right? That's what kind of started the whole thing. So, yes. So Josh just posted, well, blue cities within red states, 100%. That's the counter argument. So Newsom's argument about, well, you got to go into Louisiana, you're going to have to go into these other states. Well, yeah, yeah, I think you're right. And you're going to have to point out that these blue cities in these red states have high crime. So that would be the counter argument. So, but in fairness to Newsom, yeah, Shreveport has the highest murder rate. Correct, Dan. We talked about that on our pregame. 100%. Oh, we lost Haley and now she's back. Okay. So, yes. So, um, and the mayor of Shreveport is the mayor a Republican, Alan?
Yes, he is
Yes.
a Republican.
So that's a good political uh nod for the Dems and for Newsom. And that's something Trump needs to get a hold of. I would put the guard right in there right away. So, just to counter that, then that just stops that argument right then and there. But this is going to be a problem. See, this is where Trump is a problem. Okay, this is when this overreaching stuff. It's one thing to play politics, but when you start playing politics with National Guard, yes, crime is a winning issue for Republicans. I get it. But when you overreach, it becomes a problem. And like I said, let's just say, for example, he sends National Guard, and these National, if you, have you seen these National Guard troops? They're kids. He sends them into Chicago, into those neighborhoods. And what if one of those National Guards men get killed, get shot? Now what are we gonna have, a war on the streets? So this is not cool. Um, I understand the politics of it. I just don't think it's cool. Deb, what do you think?
So I'm calculating multiple things. I mean, it does seem to me it's I mean, I think he wants to stop the crime, but it just seems so largely political, particularly if he goes into these very blue bastions, and if there's some sort of balking on the part of whoever is running the city or whatever to have it, he can just use that as, see, the Dems are so bad on crime. I suppose he could also make an argument, I don't know, on a population level, like there's more people he could potentially save from, I don't know. I don't know if he has that argument of why am I going to these bigger cities. He's not even using that though, right? So I don't think uh, it's not entirely shrewd. Like he doesn't cover his flanks very well on anything, right? Like there's usually this big overreach in a singular direction and not considering ramifications and having fortifications or
Yeah.
arguments or anything for those. So I don't know. Does anyone know public sentiment on this right now? I was getting that sense that people were getting concerned about this use of the troops, but I don't know. Do you know, Alan? Or
Listen, even the mayor of DC, although she had two counter arguments, she was like, "Thanks for the help." And it's good to lower crime, but you're also undermining our police force. So I don't know in terms of what the public says. I'm a Republican, and I'm telling you flat out, I'm not really cool with sending National Guard all over the place. But here's the one other point I'll make. he hasn't sent them all over the place. All right. It could be just this political threat, this political ploy. It's all about politics. And by the way, this is all Stephen Miller. This isn't Trump. Trump's not smart enough for this. So this is President Miller making, probably just laughing. He's going to keep laughing and laughing until, it blows back in his face and then it's not funny anymore. Alan, what do you say?
I mean, a couple of points. You both bring up some really good points as far as perception, public perception. Um, my take on DC is DC's a very unique situation where he does have the authority to use National Guard and other federal law enforcement to beef up the city. I mean, that's right there because DC is a district of the federal government. I think it's going to be harder to go into other cities. I think, to Deborah's point, he's using it as a cudgel to try to get some action. As far as Mayor Bowser is concerned, she started out on the press conference with Trump talking about this is going to be a good thing, and then the city sued Trump about it, and now she's back on the page. And we talked a little bit about this last night. I think it would be politically smart for some of these Democratic mayors to at least have one hand on the wheel on the issue and to be able to say, yeah, I helped stop crime in my city. So because they have the midterms coming up and they're so busy chasing these red balls that Donald Trump consistently throws that they don't have their eye on the prize. They're chasing these little things. So I think it might be politically shrewd of some of the Democratic mayors to take the assistance in some form, not necessarily National Guard, but Frank brought up a point yesterday about, federal funds or partnering with FBI, ATF, those type of things. So,
Yeah,
um,
the financial argument from the right side is when you have money, the crime still doesn't go down. I think that's their
yeah,
big
I mean
issue.
that's their main argument. So
Yeah.
I would adjust my position to possibly taking help from the FBI because, typically the FBI is looked as an institution that can help local law enforcement. So,
Or maybe local law enforcement should have like, and I'm sure they do, but like be funded better, have these special units that do intelligence and say, hey, this neighborhood, you have this going on. You have drugs, you have murder, you have whatever, and then kind of focus on that.
Quick
Um,
question. Do we
yes.
know? I'm always like, do we know? Do we know? Because with New York and when was Bratton was in when he was police commissioner, in terms of their use of data, in terms of their ability to target, zip codes or blocks, even because most of
Mhm.
the crime is happening in very small areas. I don't know how much that information and intelligence has been spread out nationwide. And if I were in charge, I would try to see if there's, what are best practices and maybe all these things have been disseminated, but that would be like a first thing to do is where there's been successes to be spreading it. But I don't know how much these different, police districts, whatever, talk to each other, take up what they've been doing that's been successful somewhere else.
Okay, I'm going to bring in three of our best customers. Michael, you're up first.
Yeah, I think the whole National Guard thing, you know, ultimately is a temporary fix. So you send them into DC, you clean it up. The minute they're gone without prosecutions, you're right back where you started. And so I think it's a stopgap, whether it's politically expedient. That's another discussion. But I think if we don't get to the issue of prosecutions and taking the habitual criminal off the street and start dealing with that, this is an ongoing issue, and you can't solve it with National Guard. You can't solve it with additional police. It's not there is a police problem because we've defunded. We don't have the bodies on the street to follow up. But again, if your prosecution is cashless bail, turning people out on the street immediately, redefining what crime is, so the stats look better, you're putting people back out on the street. It's the same, the ongoing situation. Until we address that, I don't think we're gonna really find a resolution to any of this.
I totally agree, and it just shows you how politics is so pervasive in our everyday life in terms of, like, when you politicize crime to the point where you're either not cleaning up crime or you're pretending to clean up crime, it's a problem. It's a real problem for us. Frank, I'm asking you to unmute and come on in.
All right, are we unmuted? I
Yes, you
guess so.
are. Yes, you're good.
All right, well, a few points. The National Guard in the states is jointly commanded by the governor of the state and the president of the United States. In order to federalize the National Guard, in other words, in order for the president to take authority and command of the National Guard, there has to be certain circumstances. One of which is an emergency or insurrection or things like this.
Yep.
These conditions are not met in Chicago or anywhere else because this is not an emergency, because it's chronic. Anyway, so the emergency thing doesn't work. He had special authority to do this in Washington, D.C. because he had a 30-day authority, which expires. The National Guard was federalized in California to protect federal assets and federal personnel, which is a different matter, and that's a little bit more questionable. But he can't just send the National Guard into Chicago unless he, really pushes that law, and I'm not sure that's a good thing. The mayor of DC, had a news conference Wednesday, I think, to say that the crime's gone down and it's really helped. The National Guard there was not doing the work of the police. The police was doing it, the main work. I mean, they were doing some things, but they were doing the main work, and they felt supported by the National Guard. They wanted it. Because it helped them out. But the police are just, as was just mentioned, is just one part of it. The statutes, the laws, and the prosecutions and the courts, are all involved in doing this. But what has happened is that you have given the citizens of DC a taste of low crime for the time being. And I don't know why she made this news conference and sort of said this is really helping. I mean, I would like to know the background story for that. Was there some pressure from the federal government, or was there some pressure from some constituency of hers? So I would like to know why she did this news conference and what is likely to come from it. Because if she wants the National Guard in there, then she can. I'm not sure what the home rule is exactly, but DC has a National Guard. And I don't know if she can command that or something like that to help out the police, and whether or not she can get any support from the city council or whatever it is to change some of these laws, and whether she can jawbone the local judges and things like that to sort of let's clean this up. But if the citizens of DC, her constituents, the ones who voted for her, have a taste of this. And have said this is good, we want it. That would be interesting, and just to blow my mind. And yesterday, by the way, Newsom, besides this business about Louisiana or whatever it is, these Republican states with high crime rates, he also said he was flooding the zone, or whatever he said, surging, law enforcement into high crime areas, cities in California. And, he had a couple of state, whatever they're, chips, whatever they are,
DHP.
Yeah. We call them, I used to call them chips, but anyway, flanking him.
Eric Estrada.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I think it's fascinating if he's rehabilitating himself, to put himself more towards the center. And if you can get cooperation from the Democrats in Sacramento, to do some statewide thing and local authorities, then he can make some big progress and inoculate himself, or I don't know, somehow atone, or whatever it is that you do in order to try to make up for your sins in the past, and
Right.
and this
But
and this could make him a very strong candidate.
but here's the problem with that. The inauthenticity. It takes a Donald Trump to put National Guard troops in DC or in his city of LA, for Gavin Newsom to finally flood the zone with his cops in crime areas. If Donald Trump doesn't do that, if this is an issue, he's not flooding the zone with cops. That's where his inauthenticity comes into place. Never mind his other stuff. Go ahead, Dan. I know Newsom's your guy. Go ahead.
Love him. So I'm here in Los Angeles, Northeast Los Angeles, in Eagle Rock, in between Pasadena and Glendale. The next town over is Highland Park. In the 80s and the 90s, you did not go into Highland Park because there was a huge gang presence. So Chief Bratton was, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, but was the police chief under Rudy Giuliani in New York in the 90s. And I believe he was a big part, if not the biggest part, of cleaning up crime in New York. Well, we recruited him here in Los Angeles, and within a few years, he cleaned up all the gangs in Highland Park. Starting 10 years ago, Highland Park's become like this hipster haven where everybody goes to, all the foodies and everything. So if Donald Trump was smart, he would recruit somebody like Chief Bratton to come, and he's probably retired now, but somebody like him to come and clean up crime in cities, because that guy did a great job.
He doesn't have the authority to do it, though. You need authority if you're going to have a nation of laws.
I just want to make a quick comment because I see Michael here about the ethnic minorities. I will say that I do recall in recent years, maybe post 2020, Bratton going to some universities to give talks and like being booed. I mean, because I think just the whole political thing around race and ethnicity, there was some sort of negative sentiment. So he did, I mean, he still was doing what he's doing, but like he gets flack, I think, for it.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Josh.
people are going to get flack.
Yeah, I think the Trump administration just simply has a huge communication problem and like combined with a coordination problem. Trump is exercising executive control, and I'm not going to say he's unlawfully exercising executive control, but he's he's utilizing executive control in an affirmative way that we really haven't seen, and that we're not really, I don't think we're all that used to. But if I maintain that if the administration had more communication and very clearly laid out the arguments in an intelligent way, not merely like, oh, DC's a shithole, send in the troops. Hey, remember that movie with what's his name? Huh? The guy, he's mute now. Oh, yeah, that's right. Like, we just need more communication from this administration. I feel like they don't want to do that because of politics. They want to get everything done as quickly as they can and do as much as they can in preparation for midterms. But but the people that lose are the American people at large when we don't understand what our government's motivations are.
Yep.
I mean, it tends to be a shock and awe strategy, I would say, right? Like a lot of force and move fast.
Yeah, no, I get it. And look, shock and awe was effective, but we knew what it meant. When we were actually doing shock and awe, we knew what it meant. We knew what it was for. The enemy knew what it meant and knew what it was for. And the third parties knew what it meant and knew what it was for.
Yeah, and just so that you know, when Bratton was police commissioner, when he came in, the city budget changed too. It also increased support for the police. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
The
Yeah,
budget was much higher for the police.
yeah,
Because Sally just brought in a point in the chat. She says there has been an increase in military recruitment. What would it take to have an increase in support for the police and recruitment numbers? No big city can fight crime of any kind with the low numbers they have. So that's a fair point. That listen, it's a multi-dimensional problem because Michael's dead on. We which we totally ignore the prosecutions, right? It's one thing to arrest these people. It's another thing you arrest them, you process them, and you send them back out on the street, and the next day they're doing the same crimes.
yeah.
So they have to be put away, you know, and it has to be expedited. Our court system is just ridiculous because it just takes forever to get a
Well,
case going and stuff.
you
Well,
know,
Josh, you could talk to it. You're a lawyer.
yeah, yeah. Look, I mean, our courts are overwhelmed.
Yes.
Um, but this is also, but this is also, um, a local and a regional problem too. Like our courts aren't overwhelmed everywhere, right? But um, we've got we've got real disconnects and real problems with policing theories, with prosecution theories in blue cities, I would say in particular. Um, and I'm not trying to make this a political statement, simply an ideological statement. The blue district attorneys or whatever state equivalents um, of district attorneys, I mean, and I know I've said this before, not too long ago. I think maybe last week. District attorneys, or in Virginia, for example, Commonwealth's attorneys, they're elected, positions. Um, and it just seems to me that the overwhelming majority of blue district attorneys out there, particularly in the large jurisdictions, are running on no cash bail, right? And so the concept of no cash bail is that you shouldn't be penalized for being poor. Okay, all right, I agree with that. You shouldn't be penalized for being poor, but you also shouldn't be on the street if you're a criminal. So how do we solve that? Like, how do we solve that problem? Like, just do away with bail? I mean, okay, fine, just do away with bail. Nobody gets bail, right? That is a better idea than saying no cash bail and put them out on and put them back out on the street. Um, you have to secure the areas first before you can fix them internally. And I don't know what happened to, I feel like for maybe 15 days, we had this idea of Cory Booker and Rand Paul coming together to create some crime bill legislation or whatever, and it was like this like 5-second moment of clarity and cooperation and recognition that we have some serious problems with with criminal justice. And ooh, that's a nice leg. Who's that, ML?
It's ML.
I recognize that leg. And and what happened to that? It's just gone, right? It's gone. It's so sad that common sense things, common sense ideas just sort of disappear so quickly because bipartisanship just doesn't exist.
How about we just vote everybody out?
Ice Americano, venti. That's all.
Um,
Now we know his order.
We
I
know
wanted
what.
to I wanted to add something
Yeah.
about what Josh was talking about. I was listening to Mary Catherine Ham and Carol Markowitz on their podcast, and they were talking about bail in general. Now, you know, they brought up the fact someone shoplifting getting $20,000 bail for shoplifting, just a random example. That 20,000 to that person who's probably doing that shoplifting is like 20 million to them. So yeah, people brought up bail reform, which again, like I don't
It's
want to overcharge bail, but you know, the some people on the left took the idea and they're like, oh, let's just go to complete cashless bail altogether, and now everything's off the rails. It's like weaponizing our empathy for people, and not to be too harsh, but then you want to show some grace or dignity to someone who can't hit like a $50,000 bail because they don't have the means. They're being overcharged bail. And it was just it was very interesting to me. And then Carol Markowitz said, "Yeah, I was on board with some bail reform, but at this point where we're at with the no cash bail, it just whatever bail is, it is. You've lost me on that issue. So
Yeah, and
I'm also
it's not fair. It's not fair if somebody commits a crime that and can't pay the bail, right? So they get the cashless bail, and the person standing next to them, let's say it's a white collar crime, whatever. Crime is crime, but they got to pay their bail because they can. Yeah, to me, it's just ridiculous.
Well, it's
Go ahead,
also the
Pam.
whole, I don't know the extent to which they're supposed to be looking into reoffending possibility, but I don't know if they do. I mean, it seems like all these people that just they go back outside and they do another crime. Like I don't know how much they're taking that into.
Laundry list. They get a laundry list of crimes before they go away. I want to bring ML in.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to say, um, what you see in DC is like when you come through and you do something like put troops in there, obviously a visible deterrence in some key places perhaps or all over, whatever, it doesn't really matter. It is a show of, in a way, it's a show of force. It's a show of order against the chaos. And I'm willing to bet if you do that, and it's going to happen in Chicago, in New York City, in these big blue cities that have horrific crime, that most of the crime that you see is loose change crime. And I mean like all the 15, 17-year-old assholes who uh they call an Uber and then they mug or rob or shoot or maim the Lyft driver or whatever, and they got a free ride, and then they go do it again and again and again and again and again and again. Unless you're in a place like Ohio, like Dayton, Ohio, like where they actually are serious and they put people in jail and they mean it, and not like no bail, big Democrat city. It's a joke. So there is no downside to deploying the troops for 30, 60, 90 days. Now, you could absolutely make an argument if it's 6 months and they're sitting in there, yeah, we got to have a conversation for sure. But you would know that way ahead of time. That's the whole point is most of crime, the thing that people fail to mention or take stock of is the fact that we live in an honor society. We people call it low trust. No, no, no. We live in a high trust society. Believe it or not, we do. The reason is like when you had Trump go in with DC as an experiment with an army of cops and them putting down the law and not taking shit from shit bags and people who ne'er do wells. The fact that you had that, they fear that they went away. If it was true hardcore crime, they wouldn't stop. The trains wouldn't be stopped running, and that's when you would see like a all down, like a knockdown, drag out fight, like literally a war in the streets. That's never going to happen. It's just not going to happen. Because the smart crime people, the big crime people, know they're smart enough to know when to send their troops out, when to not send their troops out, and when to pull back and like when to like let it blow over. Because they're not dumb. But the ones that are kids and all that, I'm all for. And to say that would cause civil war for what? What? There is no reason there. There is no existential reason to escalate that. That there's just no reason. Anyway, don't be
Yeah.
quiet.
Before I call on Yakov, I want to ask Michael. Michael, with the idea of doing better at prosecutions and stuff, isn't there a problem systematically with the jail system that we don't have enough jails
No,
to incarcerate?
I don't think so.
I'm sorry, Mike ML. I'm talking to
Oh, the other
Michael
Mark.
Unger.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes and no. And a lot of that goes to what standard of incarceration we're talking about. Um, Between federal, state, local. My experience has been largely federal, working in the Federal Bureau of Prisons. Um, we never run out of. We used to say we're never overcrowded. We're never full. We always got more beds. The problem is even with the Federal Bureau of Prisons, you're understaffed by 30-40% because people feel like their efforts are no longer held valuable. And so if we have a lack of beds for incarceration, that's another thing, along with multiple agendas for those incarcerated. As I've talked about before, the Federal Bureau of Prisons, their primary goal is to warehouse people. Now we've turned it into rehabilitation, this, that, and the other thing. Just to go on a little bit of a tangent, if we're talking about the ability to incarcerate, in the federal or the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, they have an outside education organization called the Wyndham School District that comes into and provides those services. And there's more of that. So the point I'm making is, if you truly brought the prison system into the issue of incarceration and quit making a social matrix for handling all these other issues, and dealt with those separately by those experts and brought them into the system, you would leave the staff that's there able to actually do their job effectively. The Bureau of Prisons is not effective at education. It's not effective at rehabilitation. The unicorn industry is a shambles and a shame, and it's a slave labor, in my opinion, for what they do. Yeah, it builds resentment. It's not for the purpose during World War II to help with the war effort, and that all came about. So there are enough beds, there aren't enough staff, and it goes down to the state and local level. Then you have the standards by which they have to live in. And most of the world, we have standards in our prisons, even at the Crummy County jail level, that are palaces. Anywhere else in the world, the general populace doesn't live as good as they live even in the county and city jails in the United States. And having traveled a little bit, I've seen it firsthand, especially in Ukraine, where I've done some traveling and visiting and working in those prisons. I don't know if Professor Kenny, does that kind of fill in the blank of what you're asking?
Yeah, I'm still just in the simplest form. A lot of these, a lot of these cities claim they can't house the criminals. That's in its simplest form. They don't have
Well,
enough space to house the criminals. Like if you look at New York City, right, we had Rikers Island, and then they build the Rikers Island barge. You know what I mean? So it's like a form of, they just put it on like one of those, container ships. So,
well, there's other methods of incarceration that aren't necessarily behind walls, and we can manage some of those lesser violent crimes
right. I
in
understand.
other
Right.
ways.
Hmm.
But the problem we're talking about here largely is the violent crime that we've seen spike that would require, if we want to talk about that, a National Guard response. Um, so I guess worst first is, and there are enough beds, and the federal government has the ability to generate extra beds and can do some of that too. But again, if we don't, yeah, it's pull me, pull you. If you're not dealing with the prosecutions and providing the disincentive, what you're creating is incentivizing more criminal behavior if there's no consequence. So it's got to be an all hands on deck kind of comprehensive approach. Otherwise, you're going to keep leaking out the back end and producing more and more of what you got. But that's just one retired old, probably jaded.
Well, like, yeah, no, you're dead on. And here's the problem: there's a disconnect. There's obviously a disconnect between arresting criminals and then prosecuting and jailing them. They should all be working hand in hand, and it doesn't seem like they are. So,
Well, and you got other agendas that are
yes.
complicating the incarceration issue, as I talked about.
100%,
Yeah.
100%. Jack, come on in, buddy.
Hi, Professor. Like to your point, we have a mayoral candidate that wants to close off Rikers Island and close all prisons, and you have hundreds of thousands or millions of people in New York City voting for that. And if you've seen the budget for the district attorneys in Brooklyn or in New York City, you go into their offices, which I have, your question, the answer to your question will be answered. But besides that, basically, like, I want to bring this to a broader point, which really pisses me off, just in terms of laws that are being passed. It's being dummied down. Instead of like they want to, do no cash bail or let people who can't afford money to not to have to pay bail, but they pass these crazy broad laws, and instead of dealing with the problem, instead of passing a law that deals specifically with the problem, they pass these laws that knock that out, but then take the whole criminal justice system and screw it all up. Like, cashless bail is one part, but then there's, within 14 days, a prosecutor has to share discovery with the defense lawyer within 14 days, which is insane. So that's just my point. And also, in New York City, the way how they got rid of crime in the 2000s was they focused on the 10 to 15% of the criminals that did most of the crime and went after them and took them off the streets. So if you just focus on the 10, 15% of the criminals who are actually doing the crime, you'll bring a big dent into it.
Yeah.
That was just my thing. And also, by the way, Trump, if he really wants to go after crime, he could federalize certain crime and have the federal government prosecute those criminals instead of the district attorneys that are not prosecuting those crimes.
Yeah.
That's just my point.
Yep, no, all good points. And yeah, listen, I'm somebody, and I've never been convicted, but I have been through the system several times. Okay, and it's a game. And I could tell you going, I lucky enough to afford a lawyer. I actually, he's my lawyer. He's handled me several times, and it's expensive. But here's the thing: when you go through this system, you could see that the prosecutors are way overwhelmed. They don't even know what the hell's going on. Your attorney, because you're paying for him and you have a personal relationship with that attorney, if they're a good attorney, they know the game too, and they'll just tell you how we're going to win the case and what we got to do. And basically, you know how you win your case? You wait them out. So I spent a lot of time in some of my cases where I just went to court every month. Every month I went to court every month, and the prosecution still was never ready to bring their case, never ready. And then it gets to a point where they can't do anything to you, so then they offer you a plea deal, right? Which before the judge, and the judge says, "Well, Mr. Kenny, if you accept this deal in 6 months, and you don't have any problem in 6 months, your record is clean." And my lawyer goes to the judge, and we go back next month, and I'm done. I'm free, and I have no record. Okay, and that's how. But meanwhile, the people without money and without lawyers, they're all to watch that fiasco. It's just a nightmare. It's really a night. So there's a disparity. But listen, my crimes, or my accused crimes, I should say, were handled and adjudicated properly through the court system. And it wasn't because I was privileged or anything that I won my cases. I won my cases because I was right. But or they couldn't get me. But but anyway, no record here. But I went through the court system a few times and it cost me a lot of money, but I got off. And I can be honest with you people, I never nothing bad. Nothing bad. So don't look at me in a bad way,
Same thing happened to me.
Yep.
Thank God I had video evidence, which completely proved my case. I did nothing wrong. It was a complete bullshit on bullshit case, and I could go through it, but I don't want to bore anybody.
Yeah.
But I saw, like, I spent time and it was dismissed. Thank God. But you could see people who have lawyers and then people who have public defenders. But maybe instead of spending, again, $10 billion on illegals, spend $10 billion on hiring good lawyers, good DAs, and good public defenders, and put it towards the Americans, citizens, instead of giving $10 billion to illegals. But
Okay, let's cap this discussion off with Josh last and Frank, if you want to go again, you can go again. But we'll let Josh go, and then I'll see if Frank wants to go again.
A lot of lawyer talk in this section. Yeah, funding for local local bars and local attorneys is tough. I love that Andres is back. It's tough, but it's also a matter of choice too. In the local bars that I'm familiar with, there's just not as much interest in people coming from law school to go into a public defender's office because, and I think even if it was better funded and the public defenders actually got paid, there's not a lot of desire to do that when there are a lot more lucrative opportunities for attorneys elsewhere, particularly outside the criminal justice system and into the civil law environment. But that said, the experiences that I've had with judges, at the general district court level or even the circuit court level in state courts here in Virginia, when we've had pro se defendants or even sometimes pro se plaintiffs in a civil context, most of the judges give these pro se individuals, these pro se parties, lots of leeway. I mean,
way too much leeway, 100%.
Well,
and you guys know what pro se means? It means you're your own lawyer, basically.
Yeah, but I'm going to take an opposite position from you, Don Kinney. The judges have sympathy for the problems that pro se parties have, right? The biggest problem they have is that usually they can't afford a private attorney and they don't qualify for court-appointed counsel, right? So you don't qualify for court-appointed counsel if you're the one filing suit, for example, in civil court, right? If you're the plaintiff, you don't get an appointed attorney. In civil, you don't get, appointed anyway, unless it's some sort of like civil prosecution from, by the city or something like that for an ordinance violation. But I'm rambling. There's not a lot of desire to go into this area of law. Yeah, of course. Again, like I said, Mike, I'm rambling.
Listen, Josh. My experience, and I have some experience with pro se. Not me, because I'm smart enough to not have myself as my own attorney. But I've had experience with people being pro se, going pro se in their court cases. And I got to be honest with you, my experience with knowing these people is they think they're smart enough to be their own lawyer. And that's a huge problem.
Yep.
And the other side of it is they know how to game the system. So they're like, I'll be my own lawyer. This will get dragged out forever
Mhm.
because I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And I misfiled the paper and then they give me leeway on that and stuff. It's not like you misfiled the paper, you're guilty. No, no, no. I was pro se. All right, we'll extend it another. So it's just gaming the system to me. And it's 2 points. It's gaming the system and
Yeah.
it's people who think they are smart enough to be there. It's not the guy who's like, oh, I have no money. I need to be my own lawyer. No, no, no. I'm smarter than everybody else, so I'm going to be
Yeah.
my own lawyer.
I get it.
That's
I
my
get it.
experience.
That the system has been around for a long time.
Yeah.
I'm shocked that some people think that it's still up for the taking and they can game it. It
Yeah.
just it never works.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to do a little transition here. I don't know what Andre's up to, but we're going to talk about India. So Alan's going to deal with that, but we're going to kind of tie it into this Ukraine stuff going on. So I unmuted Andres. But Alan, start with there's our boy. There's our man. Hi, Andre. All right, so Alan, talk about Modi and what's going on with India and the rupee and
Okay, so I came across a couple things, and they do tie to Russian oil, and ultimately, like I think it's going to affect Trump's position on Ukraine. But the rupee sank to 88 rupees per dollar, its weakest ever after Washington doubled tariffs on Indian exports to 50%. The move slams everything from textiles, machinery, ripping into India's trade lifeline. Indian investors bolted and the currency buckled. For Delhi, it's a nightmare. For Washington, it's leverage. India's central bank may step in, but the signal's clear. The U.S. just turned the screws, and the rupee blinked first. So, I wanted to get everyone's opinion on this because the 50% increase in tariffs um, were in regards to India buying Russian oil, which Peter Navarro was saying India has become the Kremlin's laundromat for Russian oil.
Hmm.
Um, so I just think this is an interesting turn in events to possibly get some leverage over Russia. And then also, Andre can probably touch on this more. There was a attack, I think it was yesterday, that hit the British, some British things in Kiev. So I think this might be a big leverage move to help the Trump administration get better deal for Ukraine in the long run.
Andres, you want to comment?
Sure. What happened was actually 2 nights ago in Kyiv. There was over 600 ballistic rockets and drones on Kyiv. What Alan was referring to was two buildings, one housing the European Union's official delegation to Kyiv, to Ukraine, as well as the British consulate in Kyiv. Both were in the blast zone, so a drone or a rocket didn't hit them, but it hit the street and then it blew out the windows and destroyed a bunch of the facade from the buildings. No employees were hurt at the time. Same thing with the American factory that was targeted by Russia on the western side of Ukraine last week. But it's yet another escalation that's happening without a firm response from anybody right now. So I'm in my church clothes because the prime minister of Ukraine had to stop by my church this morning before meeting with Witkoff. There's a big delegation in town in New York, and Steve Witkoff's in town with a couple of people from State Department. Ukraine has the prime minister and a couple of people from their foreign ministry. And I'm going to get an update from them later. I'm probably going to do News Nation before I meet with them to see how Witkoff went. And today is about seeing what the next steps forward are, because since Alaska and then the meeting at the White House, it's really been dead silence in terms of Putin doing anything. And I think everybody is looking for the peace through strength. The second part of that, the strength side, like what do we do to get Putin back to the table? Because Putin basically said he's not meeting with Zelensky. Putin said he's not really doing anything much. People are going back, and all the articles that you're reading now are all about We're getting more information about what Witkoff spoke with Putin about, what maybe was discussed in Alaska. But for the last 2 weeks, nothing has gone forward. It's kind of, when people were complaining that we didn't meet with Putin the whole last 3 years, it's kind of like that now, where there's kind of radio silence from Moscow, where they really don't, they like what they got out of Alaska, and they're not really interested in talking right now. And Kenny and I have been talking for months that we need some kind of maximum pressure to get them to the table. Alaska was not maximum pressure. Alaska was open a door, let's see if, and that brought them to a table. But I can vouch from the sources I have that President Trump was upset with Putin. Some of you may have read that he was going to give him a gift and do like a bigger thing, and that President Trump was upset that Putin was doing a hard line about the territories. President Trump was trying to do his thing where he like, let's do this, let's do that, let's do that, and that he just wasn't. Putin wasn't budging. So it seems as if we're going into September with no real movement. But what happens in September is that Congress comes back. So does Congress give Trump an extra hand by passing Lindsey Graham's bill? Does Congress give an extra appropriations bill for additional aid? There is an almost multi-billion-dollar deal being announced in addition to what was announced after the White House meeting. Another big bill that would be paid for with Russian assets and European money to arm Ukraine to the hilt to push Russia to negotiations. That's on the table, but anything else from the United States really isn't. We're not having the maximum pressure. We're not having the something to say, hey, knock it off. And I'd actually like to see some American go visit the factory that got hit. I don't know who from the United States would go visit that, but that's actually like 15 minutes from the Slovak border that they can go visit that. So it'll be interesting kind of the response, because right now there hasn't been a big response from the United States or Europe to that specifically, other than speeches. And I think we want to see strength before speeches just to get to the table. I know everybody here is interested in some kind of just peace deal being made. And right now, the other side is just not interested in whatever Witkoff or Trump is putting out there. Alan had a good summary about the India sanctions, but they're just not moving Russia right now, because we've seen Russia cut off Iran. They had a security deal that they signed in January, and once the U.S. bombed them, Russia was like, hands up, buddy, I'm not dealing with that. So I don't know what's next. I do know a bunch of people will be in China at the beginning of September 3rd. There's going to be a big victory parade for one of these Chinese communist events, and Putin's going to be there. Modi's going to be there. A bunch of people are going to be there. So,
yeah, this is where Trump is totally inaccurate, or I should say inadequate.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, inadequate when it comes to these negotiations. He thinks everything's a business deal. If we look at the way he's handling this country in terms of investing in Intel and stuff, going against the idea of Reaganomics, right? He doesn't understand that there's different types of negotiations. When you go to sit down with Vladimir Putin, you don't go there with your hands open and you do some stupid flyby like that's going to impress him. You put sanctions on him first, and then you meet with him. And if he doesn't want to meet after you put the sanctions on, well, too bad. Or you walk out of that meeting with him because you want that meeting so bad, and you don't get what you want, you immediately put the sanctions on him. So you have to do something, and Trump did nothing. And then that whole meeting with the EU. Well, to me, that's a disgrace, because you talk about silence, Andre. The silence is deafening from all sides. It's just really terrible what's going on. And this guy keeps it. Now we know he's targeting human life in Ukraine. He's hitting Kiev. It's terrible what's going on, and we're doing nothing, and I'm ashamed of it, because this is not how we operate in America. We are the beacon of the world, and we need to step in and stop this guy. This guy's been a bad guy from day one, and we let him get away with murder. It's terrible. It's terrible.
we're also a bunch of dirty guys, and we're not playing that game either. We're not punching anybody below the belt.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. We don't have clean hands on anything. I agree. But like I said, this has always been an opportunity lost.
Yeah.
The way I look at it is Ukraine has softened this guy up for us to go in and finish him off. And we haven't done anything. It's really a shame. But that's my take on things. So it is 9:57. Does anybody want to say anything before we wrap this up? Does anybody have any comments or anything? Anybody want to say anything? Raise your hand. Who? Oh, Josh got his hand. Josh, you still got your hand raised? You want to come in? Where are you?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Yeah. Come on in. Come on in.
So are you, Andres, are you going to give an update on News Nation? Is your appearance on News Nation going to be
Unfortunately,
after?
I was going to do a post debrief with News Nation, but they have a longer schedule now, so I'm going to be on News Nation before.
Okay.
So all I can give them is what the staff is going to tell me about
Okay.
their talking points going into the meeting. But
Okay.
as far as the results, I can't do that until after. I'm going to see them sometime after dinner tonight, and then maybe I'm trying to get NBC or something else to do a follow up. But News Nation only had the afternoon for me, so.
Okay. Okay, that sounds good. Well, great. I'll try to
I'll post it.
look for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right,
good
so
deal.
I'm gonna let people know some things coming up here. So of course the morning meeting's back on Monday with
Tuesday.
with the
Tuesday.
Tuesday. I'm sorry,
Tuesday.
not my Tuesday. Sorry. Yeah, Tuesday. So we'll be back in that, and then we'll have the post show. I'll be running the post show, which is more of a free form kind of thing. So on Sundays we have our Step Into Cafe Americana with Andres, ML, and myself. Andres, when are you back?
I got to do one more double liturgy on Sunday.
Okay, that's fine.
And then the choirs are back. So yeah.
Okay, good. And then we'll have Andres back. But here's another thing I'm going to do with Step Into Cafe Americana, providing I get the approval from all I'm going to invite. But I want to do we have some very strong women as part of our group. So I'm going to do, and it won't be on the Sunday. It'll be a specialized show at night. So we might be cutting into the post night show. But I want to get Haley and Deborah and Kelly and Sally and Jen Judson. I want to get our strong women in a panel, and I want to ask them, relevant questions about politics, why they hate men so much, that kind of stuff. And but no, seriously, I wanna see where we're at, because we have such strong females in our group, and I really want them to come out and tell us where they stand politically, where they think there's, where they stand on Trump, where do they stand on the future of this country. I'd like to do that, and I'm going to try and coordinate with everybody, and I hope everybody will come and watch that. And then, like I said, I'll Step Into Cafe Americanas on Sundays at 9:30. I know it's not the most ideal time for people between church and wanting to sleep late and stuff, but that's our flagship. That's what we're going to do. We're going to stay with that. And my last plug is, if you didn't see the group chat yesterday with Batcha and Dan and Nina, just tune into that, because Professor Kenny was a superstar, especially when it came to Gavin Newsom. So anyway,
Professor Kenny, can I plug the late show as well?
yes, I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries. So ML, Haley, and I are taking the reins on the after show after two-way tonight. And this week we've been going on at 6 p.m. It's
East
very
Coast time, right?
loose this
Yeah.
week. But back next week we'll be on at 7 right after two-way tonight. So if you'd like to come join us, the link is in the chat. And
Where is it?
appreciate
Where's the
everyone
link?
here.
Yeah, we'll send out emails. Mike had sent an email to everybody with the permanent link for the late show. So if you didn't get that, look for it, because I'm sure everybody in here is on that email. If not, you can email me, youngjameskenny@yahoo.com, and I'll get you whatever you need. And I just want to thank everybody. It's Friday. And I just want to thank our group for coming in and spending time. I feel like everyone here is my friend. It's even though we might have some differences in politics and everything, but I like everyone. I hope everyone likes each other, and we have a nice group. And yeah, don't push it right, right, Dan. But we're doing good. I think we have a good group. We respect each other, and I don't know what happened to Chris today. I'm trying to reach out to him because he was supposed to co-host today, but
Yeah, I wore a collared shirt. I wore a
yeah.
collared shirt today just for Chris.
So Kelly says possible topic, education impact on our kiddos. Kelly, that's a great idea, and I think we can use that when we do the strong women panel. I think that's what we can bring into that. All right, guys, I'm cutting. I'm going to stop the recording, and I'm going to keep this running. So actually, I'm going to make Alan the host again. Here we go. We can have Josh make fun of me with my lack of. By the way, I've been in IT for 20 something years and I still don't know what I'm doing. But Alan, you're the host now. Okay,
Okay.
so you guys can stay on. I'm gonna get off. I will see everybody Sunday. Okay, take it
Okay. And
easy.
everyone should be able to unmute themselves right now at this point. So
Okay.